Good evening. The September 29th, 2023 special school board meeting of the Marion County School Board is now called to order. Mirroring and modeling the way our students begin each day, I ask that we please observe a moment of silence at this time. Please join me. Thank you. I'll now ask Vice Chair Nancy Thrower to read our district motto.
My pleasure. We are the Marion County School District Leadership Team. When we come together to work, we are efficient, effective, and productive. Our three most important characteristics are dedicated, transparent, and individually responsible. To work well together, we must demonstrate respect, confront reality, and be accountable. We will always put students first, and we will leave a legacy of success.
Thank you. For the courtesy of those listening to the meeting, I'm requesting everyone in the audience to please turn off their electronic devices or put them on silent. Later in the meeting, up to 30 minutes will be provided for individuals to address the board on matters concerning the operation of the Marion County school system or the school board only. Presentations to the board are limited to 5 minutes and are televised. If you wish to address the board regarding a regular agenda item or matters on which the board customarily takes action, you must first complete a peach-colored form located in the lobby. If you wish to address the board regarding a public hearing or a student discipline matter, please complete a lime green colored form. These forms must be fully completed and received by the board clerk no later than 5:10 p.m. The procedures applicable for each are on a separate sheet. Board clerk, please call the roll.
Dr. Allison Campbell, District 1.
Here.
Mrs. Lori Conrad, District 2.
Here.
Mr. Eric Cummings, District 3.
Here.
Mrs. Nancy Thrower, District 4.
Here.
Dr. Sarah James, District 5.
Here.
Dr. Diane Gullett, Superintendent.
Here.
Mr. Jeremy Powers, School Board Attorney.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Lori Conrad, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Dr. Gullett, good evening. Would you like to make a recommendation on the agenda?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm certainly happy to do so. I recommend approval of the agenda for the September 29th, 2023 special school board meeting with the materials in the board packet, those materials distributed to board members at the meeting, and the audio recording included as part of the official record of the meeting, with the exception of item 6.1 that has been placed under discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion on the superintendent's recommendation?
So move.
Motion by Reverend Cummings.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Thrower. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion passes 5-0. Ms. Martinez, good evening. Could you please provide a proof of publication for today's special board meeting?
The notice for the September 29th, 2023 special board meeting ran in the Ocala Gazette on September 22nd, 2023. The proof of publication has been attached in board docs under proof of publication.
Thank you so much. And Attorney Powers, I'll now ask you to explain the rules governing persons who wish to speak to the school board this evening. Good evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In compliance with Section 286.0114 of Florida statutes, the school board has adopted uniform procedures for public speakers who wish to speak at today's meeting, either regarding one of today's agenda items or a matter relating to the operations of the school district. Procedures for public appearance have been placed in the lobby. These include, number one, presentations to the school board will be limited to a total of 5 minutes and are governed by the following protocol. Speaker presentations on specific agenda items or matters on which school board customarily takes action will be called prior to the business portion of the school board meeting and in the order in which requests are received. Number two, no one will be permitted to make a presentation unless she or he has completed a fully completed request form to the school board's assistant prior to 5:10 p.m. Number three, the subject of each presentation must be directly related to matters appearing on the board agenda, matters on which the school board customarily takes action in regard to the operation of the Marion County school system. However, the school board may, at its own initiative, request informational presentation on matters involving the Marion County school system. Number four, profanity is strictly prohibited. Number five, the use of any student's name, except by his or her parents or guardians, or identifying references is strictly prohibited. Number 6, pursuant to 7070.03 Florida statutes, statements concerning an individual, other than the speaker or his or her child, must be submitted to the superintendent in writing a minimum of 24 hours before the school board meeting. Statements made at the meeting must follow the submitted statement verbatim. The school board will not permit anyone to speak who's not followed this procedure and will end the presentation if the speaker deviates from the text, except in response to questions. The school board has the right to refuse to broadcast or record statements which it reasonably considers to be libelous, slanderous, or defamatory. The school board has the right to provide copies of statements to the person who is the subject of the statement and his or her attorney or designated agent. Number 7, the fact the school board permits a person to speak following the submission of that statement pursuant to Section 6 does not suggest the school board concurs with, endorses, or approves the contents of the statement. Number 8, audiovisual presentations are permitted if provided to the school board's assistant at least 48 hours prior to the meeting and if compatible with current audiovisual equipment. All audiovisual presentations are limited to a total of 5 minutes. Handouts are permitted if they comply with the rules provided herein. Number 9, based on time considerations of the meeting, the school board may, by majority, rightfully limit the number of presentations on any one topic, shorten the presentation time, and schedule public comment in a different position on the agenda or eliminate public comment time altogether. Number 10, persons can request to speak to the school board without being televised. Non-televised presentations are not subject to Sections 6 and 7 and will be held after the conclusion of all televised portions of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Powers. Ms. Martinez, do we have any speakers this evening?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. So the board will be taking votes on the agenda item 6.1 that has been placed under discussion. May I have a motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement between the Marion Education Association and the School Board of Marion County, 2022 through 2025?
So moved.
Motion by Reverend Cummings,
Second.
second by Vice Chair Thrower. Dr. Gullett, do you have anything to add on this item, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Just to say that we're pleased to bring this agreement with the Marion Education Association forward, and I want to thank the collective bargaining team, both representing the union and our operations team, for the work to bring this forward to the board's consideration. Ms. Wantanisha Morant, our Executive Director over Human Resources, is also here if we have any specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gullett. Board, do we have any additional discussion on this item this evening? Dr. James?
Thank you. I'm really glad where we landed as a group. I think that it is a good agreement, and I think it's wonderful that we're going to be able to get significant raises to teachers to really break up that same pay gap that we had this past year. My concerns lie with the fact that as a board member, this item was not added until 9 a.m. this morning. And I am concerned for the transparency with the community, as well as a board member. This is an 82-page document that I didn't see until it was uploaded as an agenda item at 9 a.m. this morning. And so I think, and my question would lie with Attorney Powers as to, I understand that the chair can make exceptions when needed to add items or change items, but isn't it typical that there would be a draft item added that would then be updated when a signature is received? Would that be a traditional process? Anybody?
Dr. Gullett?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Morant, can you come forward and speak to the timeline with this item? Thank
Yes,
you.
Thank you so much. So we concluded negotiations September 20th, and it was ratified by the union on Wednesday night. So that was, I'm not sure if you realize, a very, very quick turnaround, a very, very quick ask that we had from the district to ensure that the board would be able to approve it by Friday. So the folks who are in that bargaining unit, they all received a copy of the contract on Monday. but we really needed it ratified before we could upload it. So we had it ratified. The vote took place on Wednesday. They concluded counting the votes, and we received signatures yesterday and this morning, and we uploaded it as soon as we were physically able to. But the timeline in trying to reach the October 1st deadline, this is where it landed.
Yes, and I don't, I'm not placing blame with Ms. Morant here. I'm not necessarily placing blame with anybody, but I think it's important that we have a transparent conversation about the fact that this union contract, it was not public to the public until 9 a.m. this morning. And so I think that there is an issue with that. We have bylaws in place that indicate that we're supposed to have proper witness and postings for items, right?
That's correct. I've previously issued a legal memorandum that addresses it, and that was on August 3rd of 2021, in which a board member asked whether district staff could lawfully alter the board's agenda after an agenda had been advertised and share my findings with parties. The analysis was the school board is an agency subject to Chapter 120, the Administrative Procedures Act of Florida statutes. Section 120.525 Florida statutes requires that except in case of emergency meetings, each agency shall give notice of its meetings not less than 7 days before the event. The district uses a local newspaper and its website for advertising purposes. Florida statutes state that an agenda shall be prepared by the agency in time to ensure that a copy of an agenda may be received at least 7 days before the event by any person in the state who requests a copy and who pays the reasonable cost of the copy. The agenda, along with any meeting materials available in electronic form, excluding confidential and exempt information, shall be published on the agency's website. The agenda shall contain the items to be considered in order of presentation. After the agenda has been made available, a change shall be made only for good cause as determined by the person designated to preside and stated in the record. Notification of such change shall be at the earliest practicable time. Our school board policy provides that the chairperson shall preside at all school board meetings, appoint committees, and perform other such duties as may be prescribed by law or by action of the board. The vice chairperson shall preside in the absence of the chairperson and perform such other duties of the chairperson as required by circumstances. Florida law does not dictate the superintendent has sole control over the school board's agenda, nor do the provisions of Section 120 infringe on the superintendent's authority to make recommendations to the school board. Therefore, should the superintendent recommend that an item be considered by the school board after the agenda has been distributed, the item may be placed on the agenda if the board's chair or vice chair serving as presiding officer determines that good cause exists and the procedural requirements of 120.525 are met. School board policy also provides that all school board meetings shall be conducted in accordance with the parliamentary procedures set forth in the most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order. And regarding agenda provided in advance, that states that relevant part that unless a pre-circulated agenda is formally adopted at the session to which it applies, it's not binding as to the detail or order of consideration, other than as it lists pre-existing orders of the day. In review of this matter, I'm of the opinion that Section 120.525 Florida statutes provides for amendments to the school board's agenda after its distribution on a finding of good cause by the board's chair or vice chair if serving as presiding officer. Firsthand, I've seen that situations do occur beyond the control of the superintendent administration that warrant the immediate amendment to the board's agenda. With that in mind, I recommend all materials be placed on the board's agenda at the time of publication. If a change must be made to any board agenda item that has been advertised, then the board chair must be notified and permission obtained before proceeding to alter the agenda. If the presiding officer approves the change, the board's clerk should send an email to all board members alerting them of the changes and prepare a notification from the board doc software regarding the change to agenda for publication as soon as possible.
So we did have the item on the agenda. It was, the meeting was built with the item on the agenda. What I'm speaking to specifically is that there was no attachment to the item, so the item was blank. There was nothing there for anyone in the community to see. So was there a reason why the item could not have been added on Friday?
So the same way with IUPAD and MESP, we do not upload the document until it has been ratified and signed by the representatives of that respective bargaining unit. And I would also like to trying to speak carefully, remind you all that we were, we discussed this, and we knew the timeline when it would be uploaded, and we.
I didn't know
I'm so
that the
confused.
item wouldn't be uploaded. I absolutely, when we sat in our meeting, knew the timeline that there was going to be, and we were also acknowledged that there was going to be a vote on Wednesday. I was very aware of all of that. What I wasn't aware of is that I, as a board member, wouldn't see the document until 9 a.m. the day of the meeting. And maybe I'm just novice and unaware of that, but I don't, and so then also anyone in the community couldn't see it before 9 a.m. on.
So in the meeting, I said Thursday. So from Thursday to Friday, I will own that. We were trying to obtain the signatures on Thursday, but in the meeting, we did share that we got agreement that they would vote on Wednesday, they would come to sign it on Thursday, and we would have it uploaded then. However, we did not obtain all the signatures on Thursday, and that's why it was Friday. But in the meeting, we did say, or I said that it would be Thursday. I apologize if that wasn't clear.
In my brain, what I heard when you said that was the signed version would be uploaded on Thursday. But very regularly, a draft item is uploaded for an item.
With the exception of collective bargaining agreements. So this is where perhaps if the attorney wants to weigh in on this, we as a school board are unable to even, and maybe I'm wrong, but I would believe that we are unable to post a draft, like essentially our side of the story, without the union ratifying it. Because they could very well have voted it down. And then our position would have been out for the world to see. And that's not the way collective bargaining agreements work. Dr. Gullett?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would not want to interfere with the union's right to negotiate, and the ratification is part of that. I will defer to Attorney Powers, but that would be my caution, to not interfere with this process. So, Attorney Powers, if you would like to add to that.
As I addressed in my memorandum, that it would be, there's an exemption for confidential or exempt information. However, that could also, it would only assist the board, not the general public, but it could be uploaded into the executive session, or executive portion first, and then go to public. So,
With the exception of, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but as Dr. Gullett and I have spoken recently, that the access to the executive portion of our agenda is not limited to just the school board.
Understood.
There are multiple other folks within the district that have access to the executive content.
Right.
So we're unable to lock that to just say this group of people who know, because every piece of information, while we did not see the full written document, every piece of information in this bargaining agreement was a part of a meeting that this board held. And we agreed upon all of the language
Absolutely.
in it. Did we see it redlined? We did not before 9 a.m. this morning, but that's because we were hoping that MEA would be able to ratify it in the timeline that we were hoping for, and we're super grateful that they did, and took Wednesday to get that accomplished, and then yesterday to ensure we had signatures so that we were in line with the collective bargaining arrangements.
I understand. Hold on, I'm not quite done. So my question then would be to Attorney Powers. So do you see an issue with the board having not seen this item and then it further not being publicized for the time that you outlined? Do you see an issue with us voting on it today?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Thrower.
Thank you, and I'm glad we're having this conversation transparently because it's not typical. There's nuances to this that the general public would have no idea of if we weren't talking about it right now. And so I'm grateful for the conversation. I'm also really grateful to Ms. Morant and her team and to the union and to everyone who I know that had a hand in making sure that this got done. There was also a little act of God that threw a monkey wrench into things. There was time that was scheduled, according to my understanding, to get this done, and we were off school for 2 days. So that also compressed the timeline. And as a teacher and a longtime school board employee, I will say again, every time this we do the contracts, that I always thought it was really weird that more often than not, I was signing a contract at the end of the year that I worked for. So it has been my personal commitment to make sure that we made this a priority as a board, to get this done, and regardless of what might be going on at levels higher than us. To me, that's what's doing right by our employees. So I appreciate the conversation.
May I just add that an important distinction, which brings to mind exactly our purpose for this conversation, is the distinction between the requirements under Florida Sunshine Law for meeting notice, which are largely non-waivable, and we don't get a chance, I mean, if you miss it, you miss it, and agenda notice. If an agenda is uploaded, then it's more a procedural matter to ensure when the final document, drafts may be added collectively along the way. There's a number of things on which the Sunshine Law is silent. The Attorney General has interpreted certain opinions based on case law findings, but there's a lot more leeway granted to the district to be able, any district or any agency, to be able to make findings based on flexible circumstances within that. And those are according to Attorney General opinion, case law, and also the Sunshine Law. When it comes to meeting notice, that's a horse of a different color, because meeting notice would be something that would be a much different consideration. So what's happened here, we had a number of compressed timelines, it appears, that everyone worked diligently within those. The board itself was well informed via its executive session regarding collective bargaining. The representatives of the unions were also represented during that. And then the forward-facing document, the only way to have expedited that process, or there was not a way to expedite that process as I understand. And so the only way curative to this would have been simply for there to be an extended deadline, which is not the case. So.
Madam Chair.
Reverend Cummings.
I want to give my comments, and I'll kind of be through with this. I do want to thank Ms. Morant and your team for working this out. I truly want to thank our unions, the MEA, and all those that were working in the negotiations. I think this is, since I've been on the board in 2018, this is the earliest that we've had it completed since 2018. I'm not sure what happened before then, but I believe this is the earliest that we've had it. And we have been striving to have good rapport, to work in good faith with our union, to work with our teachers to make sure that they're not working a year, half a year in the dark, because that's what it's been in the past. They've been working in the dark and not knowing what's going to happen, and trusting the board that we were going to do the right thing. So I'm peacock proud that we are where we are right now with this, Ms. Morant and Mr. Avery, and I'm glad to see us at this point, and I'm ready to vote as soon as the rest of our comments are given. So
Thank you. Ms. Conrad.
Yes, Ms. Moran, I want to thank you and your team also. I do know that we were on a very tight timeline and everybody was working diligently. And I too, coming from being a teacher, have signed a contract at the end of the year, and it's really disheartening. So I appreciate everyone's effort in getting this completed. But I do want to say I'm glad that we had this discussion, because as a new board member, it was a struggle for me also to not get the document until this morning. So I was in training all morning, and then to get the document and not be able to look at it until this afternoon was a challenge. My question would be, is there a way to have board access to some documents that does not go to other staff members, or is that a locked item? It has to be set that way. So like in this particular case, the board would have been able to view this on Thursday instead of having to wait till this morning. Is that something that can be set up?
It's confidential and exempt information, and any confidential or exempt information can be directly sent to board members in advance. It just can't be posted on board docs for the public or for a group who is outside the bargaining agency, or agencies or parties. So, yes, it could be provided in advance, but not, it wouldn't be able to be provided via board docs.
I have a question about
Vice
that.
Treasurer.
Thank you. And I love that problem solving. I was thinking the same thing, there's almost always a solution and we just have to find it. But considering like sending it through email, it's public record, this is confidential, we have to be so careful. So, I guess the night before you could, I don't even know if that would qualify for overnight, send an owl, I guess. This was just, it's kind of an anomaly, an anomalous situation, but I love the idea of the spirit of the problem solving so that if there's a way to make this to where it could have been done, I'm all for it.
And Madam Chair, I think the only way that could have happened, again, this is a unique situation. Let me throw this out there too. We did have a October 1st deadline that we were trying to meet, and I appreciate us getting to that point. The only way I see this could have happened is if we all would have came in this morning at 8 o'clock and been giving a copy in our hands, which may not have been, all of us may have not been able to get it at that time, but we definitely don't want to put it on email because it is confidential. And as soon as we put something out there, it would have been requested by public records. We don't want to interfere with the union's right to negotiate in good in good truth, being fair with that. So this is different. This one is really different. This is different. But I'm glad that we had the conversation about the transparency, and I think this may explain some things to the community on this process, because a lot of times it's done and is never talked about. It's just kind of voted on and may not know what's actually happening. But this explains why you're not going to see it out there on a board doc, because it shouldn't be. It's confidential until it's ratified.
Thank you. And often our collective bargaining agreements are in the consent agenda. We've also had that where we haven't even had discussion on them because we've had prior conversations in our executive sessions and we know what's in them, and they are published usually well in advance. This one is unique, and we knew that this one was unique when we had our executive session. We knew that we were almost in a rush, and we said, okay, first of all, can we get the meeting notice done? And thank you to Ms. Martinez for ensuring that we had the meeting notice last Friday so we could meet this Friday. And there were lots of pieces to this puzzle to make us be able to even be here at 5 o'clock on the 29th, ahead of that October 1st deadline that was set by higher powers than us in Tallahassee. So I'm grateful to all the work that was done. Thank you especially to the union for getting this done, because that's not the vote and how long that takes and 2,000 plus people and all that. It's not a fast process usually. So I'm sure, were expedited. We also had the wonderful opportunity having an early release day, and our calendar just happened to fall during this week. So I'll call that divine intervention, because that gave an extra little opportunity where students were not in front of our educators. And so that gave them another opportunity. So understandably, I'm too grateful for the conversation. Understandably, why there would have been concern as to why this wasn't posted until today. But as the chair, I did approve it to be posted as soon as it was ready and ratified. And that was exactly how the emails communication went. We didn't know when it would be done, but absolutely you have full support to post it when it's ready. And unfortunately, that happened to be earlier today instead of sooner than today. So is there any additional discussion on this item?
All the vote.
Thank you. We have a proper motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to committee reports. Actually, I'll give a couple of meeting reminders. We do have an administrative briefing and work session scheduled for October 5th at 9 a.m. We also have another administrative briefing and work session scheduled for October 19th at 9 o'clock a.m. Moving on to reports. Ms. Martinez, anything from the board clerk's office?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Attorney Powers.
Yes, I do have something regarding our impact fee analysis. I had previously sent the board an email regarding an analysis that I had undertaken regarding two particular issues, and that's the types of carve-out sort of provisions. I'm calling them that just because it's the classifications of different housing types, as well as to the issue of a dual rational nexus test analysis, making sure that is required that whenever we have in order for an impact fee to be valid, it has to pass the dual rational nexus test, which the courts have declared you have to show that it's being spent in the area and for the benefit of the people that are actually being charged. So both collected and spent within the same zones. Now, in many cases, that's extremely similar between zones. You may have a county in which things are very, very similarly situated, and you may have counties in which it's as a unit, as a whole group, you can just collect and disperse geographically within the boundaries of the county. However, in some counties, it is extremely stark contrast between a very, very rural portion and a very, very developed or coastal portion. And so those would need to have an analysis that showed that the spending was being conducted and spent, or collected and spent within the same area. Now, within Marion County, somewhere in the middle, exactly where in the middle, couldn't tell you, but we do have different types of growth, though growth throughout the county has been very significant over the past several years. So the solution to that would be to amend our proposed ordinance and resubmit to the county such that there was a creation of what we call educational benefit districts. Educational benefit districts are areas which can be sourced from a number of their geographic zones within which all collections are also spent only within that zone for impact-related growth needs. So some counties have done this geographically simply with picking boundary lines that are roughly equivalent. Some counties have done it with making it contiguous with their high school attendance zone areas. Some counties have done it based on the center of the growth types. If there's one growth type in one part of the county and another type of growth that's in another part of the county. The long story short of this is that in order to ensure that we are producing a constitutional impact fee, the best way to go about that so that it wouldn't garner any potential future challenge would be to ensure that we have those educational benefit districts, because that would show that the board has created and it's within the board's purview to do so. So the board would be responsible for determining how to set those zones. So I have been in discussion with some staff to be prepared to present the board with some options for how that should be divided. Not just one option or just much like a school calendar, there can be a number of different ways to do this. So I would like to add that to a work session for the near future for us to be able to, of course, with enough time for staff to present some options and then the board to discuss those options and find out what the board's pleasure is, because the board, obviously, are going to be the ones who are responsible for setting those zones and on what criteria you set them. There are some guiding principles, and I can explain those later at a work session more in detail, but we would want to make sure that that solved that issue of educational benefit districts and then resubmitting that to the county for their review. This does not interrupt the timeline for their public workshops. Their public workshops, the next one is going to be held on October 2nd, and October 3rd, I think. 4th, okay, I'll get it right eventually. Just keep counting down the line.
Stealing my comment.
But those are linked more to the need, not the how-to. So the how-to is what I've been sort of working on behind the scenes with the attorneys for the city and county as well. And so we'll continue to work to try to resolve any other issues that we might have with that as far as legal language. But for the creation of educational benefit districts, that ball will be placed in your court, and we'll hopefully have enough resources for you to be able to make the determinations based on the criteria that you set.
Thank you, Attorney Powers. So based on upcoming work sessions that we already have scheduled, as I just previously mentioned, I'm not certain that staff will be ready for next week to have that done. And so it's possible that the board may need to schedule an additional work session just for that topic, impact fees again. Is that your recommendation, Attorney Powers?
It would be, yes. This is the part I always hate, because I don't like to dedicate anybody else's calendar time. But yes, next week, if we were to do it next week, would likely be too soon for all of that to be generated. So there is a school board meeting on the 10th. Apart from that, we'd have to set a work session for the following week, or either the week of the 9th, set a work session, or add it to a work session that is on the 19th.
So Dr. Gullett probably needs to consult with staff at this point to determine how long that will take. But if possible, we could, if the board is available, tentatively set like a work session ahead of our board meeting on the 10th, perhaps? If
That's entirely up to the board. I would just note that I don't know what the demands on staff time are for getting the things they would need to.
I also
review.
don't think we have proper time to advertise that. That would have had
for
to go.
October 10th?
Yeah, because that would have had to go in the Gazette on the 20, because
Okay.
It would have to go in the Gazette, yeah, it would have to be noticed
Right.
starting on the 3rd, which means the Gazette's
it would have had to been
timeframe
in
would have
today's
been.
Gazette.
Right.
Okay, so it's possible then, I'm not sure what the agenda looks like for the 19th work session, but
It can't be during the week of the 9th, sometime later that week.
I think because of proper advertisement, it's
advertising.
impossible to do the week of the 9th now.
it could only be the 13th based on just like what we did this time, where we
Friday the 13th.
advertised it on a Friday and had the meeting on the following Friday. Dr. Gullett?
Yeah, Madam Chair, right now, currently on the 19th of October, we have Goal 3 update for Achieve 2026, utilization of our federal dollars or relief dollars and student achievement, and internal audit updates. So quite a full meeting already. We're happy to accommodate, but I can't answer until I have more information than what I've heard today to speak on behalf of my staff as to what's needed for that. I'd have to get more information from Attorney Powers.
And I would be unable to fairly tell you how long it would take for staff, number one, to present the criteria and explain what the different types of maps would look like. Or it's going to be, even though you're not taking board action at that time, it's going to be a deliberative process where you guys are going to have to consider different routes and perhaps create even a hybrid of ones that are presented. So could that be done in an hour? I'm sure it could. Could it be done in 8 hours? Maybe not. I mean, it's really, it's difficult for me to predict how long it will take you. I would love to be able to say you've got 2 hours to do it or 3 hours to do it, but I don't know. And I certainly wouldn't want that to impinge on, other important stuff within the same work session. So we can look into it and, with the board's permission, set a sort of placeholder work session apart from the 19th, but yes, we would need adequate time to advertise.
Can we look at, Madam Chair, can we look at that week of the 16th? That would give us time to advertise it, possibly the 16th, if everybody's schedule is clear. I don't think we need to.
And I wanted to ask a question too. I know Attorney Powers has been working with another attorney to draft a memorandum of kind of, and I would, if we're going to spend the time doing this, I kind of would like to maybe get that memorandum briefed to us then. And then I would also love to know, what are the other attorneys saying? Because the vibe I feel in the community is that people are expecting us to change what we have voted on and present it to them. And whether we're going to do that or not, I don't know, but this board has not talked about doing that. And I think if we're going to have a work session about this particular piece, I would love to just kind of sit down and talk about a couple different pieces that I have had lingering questions about, seeing as the county will have concluded their public workshops about extraordinary circumstance, I just think it would be nice to bring it all together. So are you going to have that piece done?
No, that won't be able to be completed until we have educational benefit districts in there, because what I would need is my portion of the memorandum, I've already sent sort of a general idea of where it is that the concepts that I'm talking about that they've reviewed here today. That is something that is going to have to be my intention with Ms. Stroud would be to have her to be able to review our proposed ordinance and then give an opinion based on that, based on the proposed ordinance. And I'm working with her to create a number of things, including educational benefit districts, which she drew my attention to as a solution, which, although maybe not absolutely necessary, would certainly quell any difficulties with a dual rational nexus. So I can provide the board with a summary analysis and memorandum of that nature, but as far as having something that's going to be dependent upon your zones. For example, based on what we do, if later Ms. Stroud is looking at it or anybody else is looking at it and says, well, there is a potential problem with the way that you've created an educational benefit district, we can then point out the fact that it's within the school board's purview to do so. And there are particular things that we have, for example, one of the things, and not to get off track here, but one of the things is that you can write specifically within your proposed ordinance the ability for funds to be utilized from one zone to another, given a finding of the school board that it is necessary for impact and development that is occurring and is justifiable. And so there's a number of factors that you will need to set as to what you want those zones to be. If we could continue from there and move on to other concerns or other items, and there's certainly nothing that prohibits us from discussing those. I don't know that I can be prepared to say on this day we will have everything prepared for the ordinance to vote on and move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I might ask is, if it's a work session, it would be nice to leave that work session with what we are looking for in an updated ordinance, because it sounds like we're updating the ordinance no matter what with these zones, potentially. So it would just be nice to leave that and then know that we're going into finishing up and buttoning up an item to be on a board meeting for us to then vote on, because then we still have to get it to a county commission, get it on their agenda. If they vote yes, then 90 more days. And so I'm just trying to think about how we can strategically, it's going to be February. I mean,
I hear you, and Vice Chair Thrower has something to add. I know, she's been waiting. Thank you.
Well, all right, I have 3 questions. First of all, I think you answered my first one, and that is that the county is meeting for their second workshop to address extraordinary circumstances only on the 4th. So does the introduction of the potential of educational benefit districts change their timeline at all?
No.
Change that conversation?
Does not change that conversation.
Okay, good.
And that's just to further explain, that's part of there are, as I see it right now, 3 identifiable areas that we need to take care of. One is what you just mentioned. The second is the creation of educational benefit districts, which cures a potential for what has been known as the Santa Rosa problem, the Santa Rosa case that did affect that district, which was differently situated than ours. So we're acting in an abundance of caution there. And the third would be the classes and subdivisions of classes of the types of student generation rates that go into each. So each of them are distinct from one another. So if we do discuss them all together, it would be something that I would not want us to have be overlapping for risk of confusion.
Okay, and then my other 2 questions are, if we decide to go with these educational benefit districts, do they fall within the impact fee study still being valid?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, educational benefit districts would be simply picking the zones that it will be spent in. It's essentially the creation of, if we were going to choose 4, for example, there could be 2 to 5, or however many we want. But if we were going to choose 4 educational benefit districts, all it is a series of sort of bank accounts that says, here, if the money is collected in this area from construction in this area, it is to be spent for the benefit of students who are going to reside in that area.
Okay, and then my third question, and this may be more towards Dr. Gullip, but maybe not, and just something to think about, is that with school choice and with our choice programs, you know, we could not be having a lot of action in a certain part of the county and then all of a sudden be getting a lot of action developmentally depending on what we decide to do. So that's another piece that I was just sitting here reflecting on.
It is, and that is, in my mind, one of the factors which further makes the creation of an educational benefit district not an absolute necessity, though it would be extremely useful. The fact is that school choice does indicate that any district that has 90%, or I'm sorry, any school that has 90% or less capacity can be open for school choice. I think roughly a third of our schools are currently available for school choice. However, what we have to get those numbers down from 90% plus in order to have districts eligible or have schools eligible. So if a school is built that relieves pressure from 2 other schools, then that could mean that we now have 3 schools that are open. With the building of 1 school, 3 schools now that are open for school choice considerations. And then the attendance zone becomes more of a guide, like your presumed zone is here. However, if you wish to apply elsewhere, then it's on a space available
Okay.
sort of thing.
All right, and then my last thing is that, you know, just knowing when can we get this on a work session and developing a much more clear timeline and steps. You know, I'm hearing this and I've read the memorandum and so on. It's still muddy in my mind, so I'll just feel a lot more comfortable with some dates, with some action steps, because this has been going on a long time. And I know we all are of the same mind and wanting to get this done, get it done right, you know, especially once it's formalized and memorialized, so there's no problems.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm trying to knock out the problems that we may have in some semblance of order. So the one which is probably going to require the most discussion is if there is going to be any alteration of what the school board had previously. You know, initially we said it was going to be just those 3 zones based on it's an amendment to an existing ordinance, and we had just those, not zones, but those 3 housing types. Then after our joint meeting, there was discussion with the county about the creation of 2 additional housing types, and we did so and resubmitted that. So that was fairly straightforward. There are perhaps other ways that the city or county may wish to have that altered, and the school board may wish to do it that way or may not. But those are all considerations that if there's anything different that we're going to be submitting other than what we have, we'll need to discuss that as to if we're pulling out an additional group or anything like that. And that would be something that requires a separate conversation.
Okay, so looking ahead for a timeline, I appreciate the opportunity that Reverend Cummings offered up as October 16th. That is a teacher work day, so students will not be in school. I'm not sure of the availability of all board members, but
Or if it gives staff enough time.
because my initial timeline was going to be to have a conversation on the 16th in a work session, and then if there was any additional follow-up needed, we could have it during comment time, just like what we're doing right now, on the 19th during that work session, with a date of actually having a draft ordinance for this board to review and potentially approve on November 14th during that board meeting, and then move forward with asking the county to go ahead and agenda that for their meeting in December. But that is all contingent on the 16th, if we think that would work. And if tonight's not the night to decide on that, we do have a few more days that we could determine that based on advertising. It would need to be advertised on the 6th. So we can have additional conversation next week after Dr. Gullett has consulted with her staff to see if that would work. So if it pleases the board, perhaps we need to put a pin in this right now until we can get a little more concrete information. But that would be my timeline, is that we anticipate November 14th that we would have a potential updated draft ordinance, if that is your recommendation, Attorney Powers, that will at least include these educational benefit districts if no other changes are made, or additional changes may be. And just for clarity and transparency, this is essentially coming out of your collective conversations with the attorneys in town who have expressed concerns about what the board already drafted and passed in a board meeting to be submitted. But the county has never agendaed this on any meeting for them to take action at all. So at this point, what we drafted is still in draft, though we approved it. So it hasn't gone before the county officially for their vote and approval. So thank you for the additional conversation and the work with the attorneys locally to see how we are able to ensure that all questions and concerns are addressed ahead of the county taking official action on this item. And that would be the timeline that I would like to work off of if the board is able to do that as well.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just for clarity purposes, the ad would have to go in by the 4th. It publishes on the 6th, but that ad must go in by
Okay.
noon on the 4th, so I would need to know by 9 o'clock to get the ad in.
Thank you for that clarification, yes. So we need to have conversation first of next week. Obviously, it's after 5, and Dr. Cullett's staff has gone home for the weekend on a Friday. So perhaps the board can just be briefed individually on Monday, Tuesday. Maybe your briefings are already scheduled for Monday, Tuesday of next week, to give us an update on if the timeline, perhaps your staff needs an entire month. I do not know the answer to that. So I would hope that we would be able to have an updated ordinance, because if we don't have it on the 14th, we only have one board meeting in November, and then we only have one board meeting in December. So the hope is that we would be able to get it done in November, if there are updates that this board needs to take action on, and then we could ask the county to do the same in their December agenda to take action on whatever this board puts forth. Does that sound good? Okay, so we will wait for further information, Dr. Gullett, from you as you've spoken with your staff early next week.
Certainly, as soon as I have the details of the request, then I'll speak with the staff and see what we can do and turn around. We are committed to being expedient and addressing them. I just don't know what they are, and can't speak for what the turnaround can be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anything else from legal?
Just, you mentioned the 16th, and I will say that the 16th is not ideal for me, though I can make it work if we need to. The 17th, 18th are also good days for me. I can make the 16th work if that's their needs of the board. But if they're equally situated, I would prefer not the 16th, though I can do any of those.
Okay. Well, some of this will be dependent on what Dr. Gullett learns from her staff, and we can address that next week.
And at minimum, I believe that the staff just at minimum, the ones that I know will need to be a part of this conversation would be Ms. Devick, Mr. Hurley, Mr. Ayers. There may be others, but those would be the ones that I would certainly need to rely on.
Okay. Anything else from legal?
Nothing.
Thank you. Moving on to Dr. Gullett. Anything from the superintendent's office?
Nothing additional. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. James.
Good evening. I just have one thing. So I was doing some research after we had a unique thing happen on Tuesday night, because we tabled that item and then we brought it back and voted on it. But I don't think we brought it back correctly to vote on it. So I think that we were supposed to take a motion to take from the table and vote on that. And then we were supposed to vote on the item. And we did not take a motion to take from the table. So in my little research, I think that you have until the next meeting, until the conclusion of the next meeting to make that motion, but I don't think we did that correctly. And I just don't want there to be, it was a unanimous vote no, but I think that it's important to make sure it was right.
Well, the tabling is generally disfavored in general. Tabling should never occur into another meeting whatsoever. But essentially, at that point, I would not call what we did truly tabling. It was simply deferring or suspending it for the moment until I could literally get to my laptop and conduct a couple of things and then come back and readdress. So it was more a matter of leaving off one conversation trail and immediately coming back within the same meeting. So I'd have
Did you make the motion to table, though?
I don't think there was a motion to table. I just said we would.
I offered to table it to the next meeting, but it was never tabled. It just, I said table, but it never got tabled. It just got postponed until he can find the information. So there was never a motion to properly table it. And there was never a second or anything else.
Okay.
We never voted on it.
We just delayed it.
Ms. Martinez, as doing the minutes, do you recall how that happened?
There was a motion and a second to table, and you are all in consensus. So then when, at the end of the meeting, we did not bring it back to take it off the table. We motioned to put it on, but we didn't go back and take it off.
Did you vote on it?
Yes, we all voted, we all said yes to table the item, because I was listening to them doing minutes earlier today.
Okay. I apologize then. I guess we did.
I think it was, you motioned and Lori Conrad second, and we tabled it. And then we continued on with various others, and then we went back. It's my understanding, we should have then took another motion to take it off the table, to bring it back.
From the table.
That's what I thought.
And which item was it?
Mr. Levitt's contract.
Yeah, if there is a proper motion and a second, and we voted on it, then there has to be a removal from the table.
Which I
for the proper purpose.
think I've read that we can still do in this meeting and be within the rules.
Let's take it off the table then. I'll make a motion.
I make a motion that we remove that item off the table that was on Tuesday night's meeting concerning the Attorney Levitt's contract.
We have a motion from Reverend Cummings. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Conrad. All in favor to remove that item from the table? Aye. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion passes 5-0. Then to take action on that item, we need to have a motion to approve the agreement as,
No, we have a motion on that.
we have a motion on
We had
that.
a full motion on that.
And we voted.
And we
And we
voted.
voted.
Correct, the motion failed.
Okay.
Right. 5-0.
We just
had to
didn't
have a
properly take it off the table, I don't.
Right.
So in the future, perhaps we don't need to actually table an item. We just need to say that we're going to move it to another spot.
I think I remember noting at the time that tabling is something that I don't like to do. It's not favored. It's not
It's muddy.
We just need
it's
to
muddy.
Postpone it and move
Postpone
it
the
to
vote,
another-
would that be
Right.
better?
Normally, if you're going to table it, you table it to another meeting.
Another-
Yes.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't come back, if it's not brought up, then it dies anyway. So,
Right.
so we're good now.
What would be the Chair?
Yes, Vice Chair.
Thank you. What would be the proper verbiage for what happened the other night? Because all it was that we needed to delay for a few minutes so you could do your due diligence.
Right.
We were fully intending to vote on it that night, so it really wasn't a table, it was like a leg.
It was I don't think it needed a motion. I think it was something that we should have just postponed. And however,
the verbiage?
the fact is, there's only one item should be on the floor at a time. However, when we get into a situation where there may be further input that is required, we have two options. Everybody stop, take a break, and we come back at it 15 minutes later, which is, perhaps wasted time, or we take up a new matter in the interim and then come back to that matter. But for clarification purposes, there should be only one item on the floor at one time.
We just don't want to get tripped up on this again, because, tabling is one thing, delaying is another.
Okay.
That's all I had. I just wanted to bring that up because I wanted to make sure we did that correctly. Thank you.
Reverend Cummings?
Thank you, Dr. James, for bringing that up and clarifying that so that we could be decent and in order. We don't want to ever do anything that's out of order intentionally, or we want to make sure that we're transparent with our public. I just have one thing, two things. One, I'm glad that this has gotten done, that we voted on this MEA contract. I'm praying that in the future we get it done even faster. That's what we really want to be shooting for as a district. And again, thank you to all those parties that were involved, Mr. Altabello, Mr. Avery, Ms. Morant, Mr. Carson, all those that, Ms. Boston-Ellis, all those that came to the table and said, let's get this thing done, because this is this is to show our staff that we're concerned, that we want to make sure they're taken care of, and that, again, they're not working in the blind. Nobody wants to work in the blind or in the dark, and to figure out what's going to happen later on. And I think that gives that helps build the rapport with our staff that this is done. Two, and I'm not sure if I'm going to bring it up, but I'm not sure if I'll get the right answer, get the answer. But the other night we had some robust conversation concerning transportation, concerning buses and different things. Even since then, I'm sure we're still getting correspondence concerning transportation and buses. And this, I guess this question is for the superintendent because her staff isn't here, but I'm sure she can relate a question. With us having this number of buses that are late, could we create an attendance code that would be just for those students who are late because of the bus? And then we could have that data so that we can look at, that could help in us problem solving this, but also in, and it'd be just a unique code, just for those students.
Like for COVID.
Exactly, just for those students, so that we can track this thing and see how and get those numbers. We did it for COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We got them daily or weekly or whatever we got it, but I think that would help us to move forward. I think that would be very transparent with our schools, our principals, because we're hearing from our principals saying, hey, we got to do something, We're hearing from the parents saying we got to do something, So I think this is just some data that would help us to problem solve this. I know that we're going to have this, I think, in the upcoming work session. I'm not sure if it's going to be next week or not.
It is.
If it's next week, I won't be here at that work session, so I guess I'll get it in now, my question. But I think that code would really help us in tracking this thing.
May I? Thank you, Board Member Cummings. I think that's a great idea. Certainly, we'll look into that, and we've done it before, as you've said, so I don't see why we couldn't. It's a matter of how much time it takes to create it, but I don't see why we couldn't. And you're correct, we're going to do a part one of transportation, because I didn't want to wait till November, so we put it on for the part one to be on the 5th, and then we'll do a follow-up.
And then I also was thinking that if the parent was able to take their kid to school instead of that kid riding the bus to school, that kid's still probably going to be late. The school would have to work that out,
Right.
And make sure they get coded properly. If that parent took their kid to school and they still were late, it was because of the bus. So that was just some thoughts I had. But again, thank you, and let's go home.
Thank you, Reverend Cummings. Ms. Conrad?
Yes. I just have I have a challenge. Dr. James, District 5, has been getting T-shirts from her base schools, her district schools. So I just want to issue a challenge to District 2. I'd like to see some spirit shirts so I can participate in the Friday Spirit Day for our schools. I'm guessing my fellow board members might be interested too, but she's sporting her spirit shirt today.
Yes, Ocala Springs.
Ocala Springs.
Kind is the new cool.
Yes, and
Or cool is the new kind, whatever it says.
And
Kind
she
is-
had a shirt from Anthony waiting for her when she got here today. So District 2, we got to step up our game. Need some spirit shirts to wear on Friday. So I just wanted to say, I think that's a great idea. I love the spirit shirt idea for the board, and I would happily support and wear a T-shirt.
But District 3 is going to show up, and I'll have one for all my schools.
Do you?
And I will, I'm sure, because after hearing this, they're
Yeah,
going to make
District
sure.
1, District 1, I need them too.
So there's a challenge been issued from the board. So just really excited for Dr. James and the support that her schools are showing. I also too wanted to thank Ms. Morant left And we had some good conversation today, and it was a lot of work that got done in a short period of time. So thank you again to everyone that was involved in making that happen. I also want to thank Ms. Dobbins and her team. We had a big discussion about transportation. A lot of ideas are still being shared. We have not fixed the problem. We have a lot to do still in that area, but she has been diligent in updating us and getting us information so that we have a true picture of what's going on in the district. And I do, just to give perspective, the last couple days I've been in a training and with other districts in our area, and Tuesday night I left here feeling so beat up that, that we had so much to work on. And so being in a group with other districts and their struggles were so much larger than ours. And so today I walked away feeling, wow, okay, we've got room for improvement. Things can be better. We want all of our kids to get to school on time, but we're doing a pretty good job. So I just want to provide encouragement for our teams. We know that we all want our students to get to school on time, and I'm looking forward to furthering that discussion, and just to remember to keep perspective. And my last comment is personal. The board knows, but many people don't. I have a pretty severe hearing deficiency, and it's quite a challenge, especially up here on the board. And so today the audio team met me before we started our meeting and took time to rework microphones and speakers, and I actually don't even know the correct lingo for all the technology pieces that go into the audio, and I just want to offer my sincere thanks. It's really a challenge, and it's hard for them because it's so subjective for me. He changes something, and then it affects another piece of what I'm hearing. So I just want to say thank you, Kevin, to you and your team for taking time to help me with that this afternoon. And that is it. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Conrad. Vice Chair Thrower.
Thank you. Board Member Conrad, you're a very easy person to help because you're so kind and you're so grateful and you're so supportive.
Yes.
And that makes people want to help you. So anything that I can do to help make that better, I'm happy to switch seats or whatever it takes. And getting back to the bus thing, for anyone that follows school board meetings, they know how I feel about transportation. And so I'm glad that we're having another work session. I just want to reiterate again that there's been plenty done, and we have made improvements in a pretty intractable issue, but we're not going to rest until we get it fixed. And I think that I agree with Board Member Conrad. I walked away from Tuesday night's meeting feeling very beat up too. But you know what? I translate that to caring, If I didn't care, then it wouldn't bother me, It'd be like, oh, it is what it is, We're very committed to having as many meetings as it takes and as much problem solving as it takes to make big problems solved. So we have a couple things that continue to be a challenge, and that is just sheer geographics. You can only run so many double and triple routes when you're covering a county the size of Rhode Island. And, that's to our detriment. Much smaller counties, it's a lot easier to get the kids where they need to be. We also subcontracted for drivers either last year or the year before, 2 years ago, and that wasn't super well received by a lot of people, and especially drivers. But, when you're trying to relieve the pressure, you have to be willing to try whatever you can. I continue to really want to know the top reason why drivers are leaving, because drivers are continuing to leave. And from what I've been hearing anecdotally from drivers, they're pretty satisfied with the increases they've been getting pay-wise and just the general support. So that leads me to wonder, what is it? What is it? And depending on what it is, then as a board member, and I'm sure the rest of us are the same, committed to addressing it, whatever it takes. So I look forward to the next work session, and I also look forward to getting that information, and I want it unfiltered, and I just want the bottom line. It is what it is. And then we problem solve it from there.
Madam Chair,
Reverend Cummings?
Vice Chair Thorold just brought up something that's very good. We don't know. We don't know. I mean, some of us talk to people individually. We don't know why there's such a high turnover out of transportation. Have we considered doing a survey or some kind of question and answer? Because I think that may kind of help. We can't solve problems if we don't know what the problem is.
And that's exactly what I had written down. Brief 2-question survey.
Yeah.
Your top 2 reasons why you leave, or why employees that are continuing to stay, why they would be considering leaving. Just 2.
And encourage.
I want to know the top 2.
And encourage them to be honest and just give it to us. That's the only way.
There's no way to fix it.
Yeah, that's the only way we're going to fix it.
Ms. Conrad?
Do we have information on their exit interviews?
But
That survey data is not singular to transportation.
Okay.
And so I think that it offers a lot of opportunity for them to check a box, and often it might say other. I don't think one of the options is student behavior. I don't think that's one of our options in our exit interview question. And we don't know if that would be the reason that bus drivers are leaving.
That's astonishing, actually, because teachers leave all the time because of student behavior.
And I don't think that, we saw data recently of what the survey said, and I'm not certain that student behavior is one of the options, but perhaps it should be.
Yep, because I've been shared multiple times. Pay, bus drivers, and student behavior. And then more recently, hey, you guys have done great with the pay, we appreciate it. But student behavior, and then thank you, Dr. James, for working on the code of student conduct and tightening up, that with transportation. But I would really like to know, it's all in the details, right? How easy is it really for a driver to even write a discipline referral? They're on a bus, and some of them are driving 2 and 3 and 4 routes and, whatever. And I don't want it to turn into an easy thing to be punitive, but the process, the procedure needs to make sense so that we get the information we need and we don't not get that information because the system is too cumbersome and too hard.
And I think.
We just need genuine, legitimate information so that we can get this solved.
And I've heard some of the same things that you heard. The one is the support and discipline from the bus drivers. When they need to discipline, they don't feel they're getting the adequate support. And so I think this survey needs to be unique to just transportation because that's where we're really having an issue at right now. And then as we go forward, we may need to have surveys, look at our exit survey to make sure that it does fit the criteria. Because what happens is, most of the time when people are leaving, sometimes they don't leave in the right state of mind, and they're not going to tell us everything because they may have the intentions of coming back and whatever. They don't want to be blackballed. They don't want to feel like there's going to be some punitive issues. So we need to be able to let them do those exit surveys and do it with complete transparency and knowing that it's not going to affect them. So I'm looking forward to us working that out.
That concludes your comments, Vice Chair Thoreau?
Just about, and after having worked in schools, I understand the catch-22, because if a kid is suspended off the bus, what are the chances that the kid's going to come to school? And rightfully so, principals are worried about school grade and all of those things. I get it, but as long as the tail's wagging the dog, we're never going to solve this problem, and we're going to need to be bold, likely. And I'm okay with that. More than okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Thrower. Thank you for the robust discussion again on transportation, and I'll look forward to that coming up in the work session upcoming. I had the fortunate opportunity to participate in an attendance meeting in Wyoming Park Elementary School this week. I want to give a shout out to Ms. Hunt. She brought in folks, we had a city councilman there, we had folks from the mayor's office, we had representatives from nonprofits, representative from the faith-based community, representative from transportation. She put problem solvers in a room. And so we had the opportunity to look at their data and pinpoint exactly where the challenge areas are and hopefully come up with some creative strategies that might be able to address their attendance issues. And we'll have another meeting next month to see if any of those were enacted and what that's going to look like and continue to problem solve. But kudos to Ms. Hunt and her team for bringing together not just folks in the district, but people from outside in the community, because as we've talked about, attendance is a community issue. And so thank you, Ms. Hunt, for including me in that conversation. And I look forward to seeing the progress that we've made at Wyoming Park as well as other schools all throughout the county, because attendance continues to be a challenge. Also wanted to make the board aware that I was in Dr. Gullett and I have been at a meeting with our legislators to talk one-on-one with them about our legislative priorities specifically ahead of us going to Tallahassee. They're excited that we will be in Tallahassee and meeting with them there in their offices, and you know how powerful that is. But in one of the meetings yesterday, I learned when Marion County Day is. And I also saw Dr. Creedle today from Marion County when I was at another session talking about legislation. And so I wanted to go ahead and give you all those dates. I know last year, Dr. Gullett and I attended Marion County Day. We drove up that day and drove back. But what the county does is they do have a dinner the night before. So now that we have the date, we might be able to plan in advance. So February 7th will be the evening dinner, and February 8th will be Marion County Day. And so I think last year was the first year that Marion County Public Schools has ever participated in Marion County Day. Okay, with the table and a booth and all the things? Okay, so it had been a long time since we had done that, because we had not been, at least since I had been on the board. So nevertheless, last year we had all the things, the banners, the tablecloth, the people representing Marion County Public Schools. They'll have multiple businesses that are participating from Marion County. He already told me that we're going to have Big Lee's Barbecue again, and we're going to be in a prime location for Marion County Day. So go ahead and mark your calendars, February 7th and 8th. And I would also ask the board if you think that might be something that you would want to attend the night before, then please email Ms. Martinez individually, and we can see if we can and let's set a deadline for please email Ms. Martinez by next Friday, which will be October 6th. So please email Ms. Martinez by October 6th if you would like to have a hotel room for February 7th that evening, and that way she can work on travel plans for us should that be something. I know that we'll be going up in November already. That's already taken care of. And I think Reverend Cummings and I are going up for FSBA's day in the legislature in January. But this is just another opportunity during session to talk to these amazing legislators. And we have one of the most senior legislative delegation groups. That was the session I was in today, that so many of our delegation are in that senior class that this is their last session in their current positions. And so it's a wonderful opportunity for us to thank them for the support they've given us in the past and see what we can hopefully get in their last session too. So just wanted to make you all aware of that. And I think that's going to conclude my public comments this evening. So with that, there being no further business, may I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Reverend Cummings. Second by Ms. Conrad. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion passes 5-0. Meeting is adjourned at 6:22 p.m. Thank you so much.